Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're unpacking something pretty unusual, a major address at the UN General Assembly.
Right.
But this wasn't your typical diplomatic, lots of careful language and hints.
No, not at all. This was really direct. It felt more like a detailed declaration. Military actions, political challenges, future demands, all laid out for the world body.
Very high stakes, very comprehensive.
Exactly. And our source material for this deep dive is the full transcript of that speech, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent address. It's really a foreign policy manifesto laid bare.
So our mission today...
Well, our mission is to kind of filter through this dense information and pull out the three core messages he was sending, the big strategic pillars, if you will.
And these seem foundational, right? Not just looking back, but setting a course forward.
Absolutely. First, there's this really ambitious claim about dismantling an axis of terror led by Iran. And he didn't just claim it. He offered military specifics to back it up.
Okay, that's number one.
Second, the detailed justification for the war in Gaza.
Yeah.
He insisted, that you have to see it through the lens of October 7th, the trauma of that day.
Still very raw.
Very. And third, a really forceful rejection of any externally imposed Palestinian statehood.
Yeah.
Almost unanimous, he claimed. So it's definitely high-stakes stuff, and we're breaking it down for you, the learner, so you can grasp the strategic shifts here.
And the opening itself was, wow, quite something. He jumps right in, referencing his own speech from the year before.
Yeah, where he'd shown that map, remember, the one detailing what he called the curse of Iran's terror axis.
Right, and now he comes back and says, basically that axis, it's largely devastated.
It's an incredibly bold claim to start with. It immediately frames Israel not just as defending itself, but as this proactive force reshaping the region, changing the power balance.
So let's unpack that threat profile he described a year ago. What exactly did he say Iran and its allies pose?
Well, the core threat, according to the speech, was Iran itself, specifically its nuclear weapons program, which he said was moving rapidly, and its ballistic missile program.
And the intent he ascribed to those programs.
Explicitly, he said they were meant to destroy Israel, yes, but also to threaten the U.S. directly and to blackmail other nations. So a global threat originating from Tehran.
And then there were the proxies, the sort of tentacles of this axis.
Exactly. He laid out the four main ones very clearly. You had Hamas in Gaza, obviously central after October 7th. Mm-hmm. Then Hezbollah, led by Nasrallah in Lebanon, launching thousands of missiles. Third, the Assad regime in Syria, which he accused of hosting Iranian forces, sort of a forward base.
Okay.
And finally, the Houthis down in Yemen, disrupting global shipping firing missiles. That was the picture he painted of the threat landscape just 1 year prior.
A very hostile picture.
And then the speech just pivots straight into detailing the claimed victories against each of these entities over the past year. And the language used was remarkably blunt, very specific.
Like with the Houthis.
Yeah, he said they'd been hammered. And that included action taken literally the day before the speech. Claimed half their leadership was gone.
Gone. That word comes up a lot.
It does. For Hamas, he claimed the bulk of their terror machine was crushed, most leaders gone, much of the arsenal crippled.
Now, wait, the claim about the Assad regime being gone, that sounds huge. Does gone mean overthrown or something else? What was the context?
That's a really important question. The speech didn't necessarily mean Assad himself was removed from power. It seemed to focus more on neutralizing his regime's effectiveness as an Iranian proxy.
So militarily neutralized?
Essentially, yes.
Right.
The claim was they destroyed Assad's armaments in Syria, making the regime gone from the perspective of being a useful base or a direct military threat to Israel via Iran.
And the militias in Iraq.
Those, he said, were still deterred. But then he added this very direct warning. If their leaders attack Israel, they will be gone. That suggests a shift, maybe, from just deterrence to preemptive strikes against leadership if they act up.
It's a much harder line.
Definitely.
And then there was that anecdote, the one about the pagers or beepers. It seemed like a small detail, but he presented it as significant. Tell us about that.
Right. It was a fascinating bit of alleged psychological warfare. The claim was that Israeli intelligence managed to distribute thousands of these devices looking like simple pagers among enemy fighters.
Okay.
And then, at a specific moment, they all triggered simultaneously. Didn't explode lethally, but made a noise or vibrated, whatever. The point was, thousands of fighters supposedly hit the dirt in fear.
Wow. The message being?
The message, according to the speech, was pure psychological dominance. We can reach you anywhere. Anytime. We know where your assets are. You're under constant surveillance. A way to instill, terror.
A demonstration of reach. But okay, the biggest claim, the one he really seemed to emphasize above all else,
was about Iran's core programs.
Yeah.
The assertion that Israel had devastated Iran's atomic weapons and ballistic missiles programs. Devastated.
And he didn't stop there.
No. He followed up by stating that Iran's top military commanders and its top atomic bomb scientists are also gone.
Which brings us to this Operation Rising Lion.
Exactly. The centerpiece of this whole section. He gave it this specific name, the 12-Day War with Iran, rebranding it with that biblical reference, Rising Lion. He framed it as something legendary, militarily speaking.
Oh, these are the targets.
The scope, the scale, the audacity. He talked about Israeli pilots neutralizing Iran's advanced missile defense, basically achieving air superiority over Tehran itself. That alone is a mess.
But the detail that really jumps out is the alleged joint operation with the U.S.
This is the most politically charged part, absolutely. The speech explicitly alleged joint action, Israeli fighter pilots and American B-2 stealth bombers hitting Iran's nuclear enrichment sites together.
Bombers. For you, the learner, just pause on that. These aren't just any planes.
No way. These are America's top-tier strategic assets. Stealthy, long-range, incredibly expensive. To claim publicly at the UN that B-2s were involved implies, well, an extraordinary level of U.S. political authorization and deep strategic coordination.
Saying that on the world stage essentially declares that the U.S. and Israel acted as one unit against what they saw as an existential threat from Iran.
Precisely. And the speaker didn't shy away from that. He explicitly thanked President Trump for what he called bold and decisive action, said they delivered on the promise to stop Iran from getting the bomb.
Framing it as removing not just a threat to Israel, but a mortal threat to the civilized world.
That was the framing. But even with these huge claimed victories, the message wasn't mission accomplished. It was vigilance.
Right. He insisted Iran must not be allowed.
And he laid out specific demands for the international community. First, eliminate Iran's remaining stockpiles of enriched uranium immediately.
And second,
he demanded that UN Security Council sanctions on Iran must be snapped back immediately.
Snapped back. Can you just quickly clarify what that means for listeners? It sounds like a specific diplomatic tool.
It is. It refers to a mechanism within the JCPOA, the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Even though the U.S. pulled out, the deal included this provision allowing participants, if Iran violated the terms, to trigger a return or snapback of all the old UN sanctions that were lifted.
So he's asking the UN Security Council members, who are still party, essentially, to use that mechanism.
That's the demand. Use the legal framework to lock Iran down, basically complementing the claimed military action. The idea is the physical threat is down, but we need legal guarantees it stays down.
Okay, so military action plus legal.
Right. And he wrapped up that whole section by reminding everyone that the job isn't totally finished, that remnants of Hamas are still in Gaza City, vowing repeats of October 7th, which is why Israel, in his words, must finish the job.
And that pivot, connecting the big regional picture back to the immediate fight in Gaza, takes us straight into the second core theme you identified.
Yes. Anchoring everything in the trauma of October 7th and the hostage crisis, he really hammered the point that the world forgets quickly, but Israel cannot and will not forget.
And he used very graphic language to make sure the UN delegates remembered.
Extremely graphic. He recounted the unspeakable savagery, as he put it, the scale. 1,200 people killed, including citizens from dozens of countries right there in the hall, over 40 Americans.
And the specific acts. He didn't hold back.
No. He spoke of beheaded men, raped women, babies burned alive in front of their parents. He called the perpetrators monsters. It was clearly intended to shock, to force the diplomats to confront the brutality directly.
And he used that QR code pin, too, right on his lapel.
Yeah, that was a clever modern touch. Held up his lapel, told the audience, diplomats, everyone watching, hold up your phones, zoom in, see for yourselves why we fight and why we must win, bypassing protocol to deliver a visceral gut punch.
Chart, in a way. Then he moved to the hostages. The numbers are stark.
Very stark. Over 250 taken initially. He mentioned Holocaust survivors, grandmothers, children. He said 2 out of 7 have been brought home so far.
But the focus, understandably, was on those still captive.
Heavily. 48 remaining. And he specified 20 of those are confirmed alive. But their condition, he described it as horrific. Starved, tortured, deprived of any daylight, deprived of humanity. It puts immense pressure on everyone when you hear details.
And reading out the names, that makes it incredibly personal. It stops being a statistic.
Exactly. It's vital for you, the learner, to hear these names because they represent individual tragedies, not just numbers in a conflict. He read them out. Matan Angris, Gali, and Zura Berman brothers.
Elena Blibot, Rome Boslavsky, Nimit Cohen, Ariel, and David Kuno, another set of brothers.
Gil Badalal, Avatar Davidid, and he specifically mentioned that emaciated photo of Davidid, the story about him being forced to dig his own grave. Just brutal detail.
Maxim Herkin, Eaton Horn, Seth Kalon, Barstein, Omri Mean, Eaton Mo.
Yusuf Kim, Okana, Alon O, Anatam O, and Matan Sanjero. Reading the list, even in the transcript, you feel the weight. It was clearly designed to make the world feel that weight, too.
And this led to describing a pretty extraordinary communications strategy.
Unprecedented, really.
Yeah.
He claimed he was speaking live from the UN podium, not just to the diplomats, but directly to the hostages themselves.
Wow.
Through massive loudspeakers set up around Gaza, and also streamed live to Gazan's cell phones, apparently using Israeli intelligence capabilities to push the feed.
Wow. And the message?
To the hostages, it was reassuring. We haven't forgotten you for a second. We will bring you home. But to the Hamas leaders and jailers holding, a stark ultimatum.
Which was?
Lay down your arms, free the hostages now, comply and live, or Israel will hunt you down. Very direct threat.
And this tied into the conditions for ending.
Directly. He laid out 3 non-negotiable conditions for an immediate end to the fighting. 1, Gaza permanently demilitarized, no more weapons.
Okay.
2, Israel retains overriding security control over Gaza indefinitely.
Meaning Israeli forces could go in whenever they...
That seems to be the implication, yes. Overriding security control. And 3, a peaceful civilian authority must be established, run by Gazans and others committed to peace with Israel, not Hamas.
So no return to the status quo ante?
Absolutely not. The goal articulated is a fundamental structural change to ensure Gaza can never again be a base for attack. And that's why, he argued, the fight against those last Hamas elements in Gaza City had to continue to finish the job.
Okay, so that covers the Gaza-specific justification. Now let's shift to Section 3, the broader global context, right? Connecting Israel's fight to global.
Exactly. This part felt aimed squarely at the leaders in the room who might be thinking, this is a regional conflict, what's it got to do with us?
And he used that pop quiz format to make his point.
Yeah, it was a rhetorical device, but effect. Question 1. Who shouts death to America? Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis?
Answer.
All of the above, according to the speech, making the link immediate.
And question 2.
Similar structure. Who has murdered Americans and Europeans in cold blood? Listed Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran. Answer again. All of the above.
The conclusion being
that these aren't just Israel's enemy. They hate all of us, meaning the West, the modern world, with equal venom. He framed them as seeking to drag everyone back to a dark age of terror and fanaticism.
a shared enemy requires shared defense, implicitly.
That was the underlying mess, which led him to talk about intelligence cooperation. He claimed many leaders who condemn Israel publicly actually rely heavily on Israeli intelligence privately.
Saying they value Israel's superb intelligence services for stopping attacks globally.
And he didn't just leave it as a vague claim. He brought out specific, powerful quotes to back it up. He cited General George Keegan, former head of U.S. Air Force intelligence.
What was the Keegan quote?
Keegan apparently said that if the U.S. had to gather the intel Israel provides on its own, America would need 5 CIA. That's a stunning quote, if accurate. Really emphasizes the perceived value.
And he didn't just use an American sword.
No. He also cited the German Chancellor, Merz, supposedly saying after Israel hit Iran's nuclear sites, Israel is doing the dirty work for all of us. Again, highlighting this alleged disconnect between public statement and private reality.
But then he pivots sharply. This private support, he claims, vanished after October 7th fought back.
Right, and that's where he used that really pointed counterfactual analogy. He asked the audience to imagine a proportional attack on the United States.
The numbers were staggering. 40,000 Americans massacred, 10,000 hostages.
And the rhetorical question was, would America just stand by? Would the U.S. leave the regime responsible for that stand?
The implied answer being absolutely not.
Of course not. The U.S. would mobilize its full power to wipe out that terror regime.
Yeah.
And his point was that is precisely what Israel is doing in Gaza. Therefore, the international criticism is hypocritical.
He then directly accused world leaders of cowardly.
Pretty much. He accused them of buckling under pressure from biased media, from radical Islamist groups within their own countries, and from anti-Semitic mobs on the streets.
The phrase he used was incredibly blunt. When the going got tough, you caved.
Very direct. And he framed Israel's situation as fighting a 7-front war against barbarism, while many supposed allies were opposing, condemning, even embargoing Israel.
And waging political and legal warfare, he used the term lawfare.
Yeah, let's just quickly define that for you, the learner. Lawfare isn't just criticism or bad press. It's the deliberate use of international law, courts like the ICC or ICJ, UN resolution, as weapons in a conflict, trying to delegitimize and cripple an opponent through legal means.
So he's framing these international legal challenges not as legitimate concerns about conduct, but as another front in the war against Israel.
That's exactly how the speech presented. An indictment of what he called weak-kneed leaders who appease evil. The warning was stark. Don't think you can sacrifice Israel to appease these forces. They'll come for you next. He accused nations of inverting morality, turning good into evil and evil into good.
That intense critique really sets the stage for the next section, Section 4, where he directly tackles the specific charges of genocide and starvation.
Right. He called them blood libel, a term heavy with historical anti-Semitic connotation. And this is where he brought in outside validation, particularly on the military conduct side.
He cited Colonel John Spencer on the genocide charge.
Yes, calling Spencer the world's greatest expert on urban warfare. According to the speech, Spencer stated that Israel is implementing more measures to minimize civilian harm than any military in history.
Now, that's a claim that's obviously heavily disputed by international organization critics.
Oh, absolutely, fiercely disputed.
Yeah.
But rhetorically, within the speech, it serves the purpose of presenting expert military back for Israel's conduct. And he followed it with a statistic.
The casualty ratio claim.
He claimed a non-combatant to combatant casualty ratio of less than 2-to-1, which he asserted is lower than NATO achieved in Afghanistan or Iraq, despite Gaza being incredibly dense, urban terrain, full of tunnels, and what he called terror towers.
That density and the tunnel network are key factors, aren't for you, the learner. Fighting in that environment presents unique challenges for minimizing.
Immense challenge. And the speech detailed the specific steps Israel says it took in places like Gaza City to mitigate harm, dropping millions of leaflets, sending millions of texts, making countless phone calls over 3 weeks, urging about 700,000 civilians to move to designated safe zones before major operations began.
And he contrasted that directly with Hamas's alleged strategy.
Right. Accusing Hamas of embedding fighters and weapons in mosques, schools, hospitals, civilian site, and not just embedding, but actively forcing civilians to stay, using them as human shields, often at gunpoint, to serve as, quote, props in its sick propaganda war.
Which led to that pointed question.
The logical challenge he posed to the UN. Would a country committing genocide plead with the civilian population it is supposedly targeting to get out of harm's way? He asked rhetorically if Hitler or other genocidal leaders ever warned their victims to leave.
The argument being that the actions described are fundamentally incompatible with genocidal intent.
Precisely. The narrative has been flipped, essentially giving Hamas a pass while condemning Israel's self-defense.
Then he moved on to the starvation charge. Another blood libel, he called it. How did he counter that?
With specific aid figures. He claimed that since the war started, Israel had facilitated the entry of over 2 million tons of food and aid into Gaza.
2 million tons. How did he break that down?
He calculated it as equivalent to 1 ton of aid for every single person in Gaza, or nearly 3,000 calories per person per day. A huge amount.
So if there is starvation or deprivation, the speech argued,
the blame lies squarely with Hamas, stealing it, hoarding it, and selling it at exorbitant prices to fund their war effort and enrich themselves while the population suffers.
And did he offer any proof for that claim of Hamas diverting?
He cited a specific UN admission from the previous month, claiming the UN itself reported that Hamas and other armed groups had looted 85% of aid trucks entering Gaza. That UN citation is crucial for his argument.
Shifting the blame for any humanitarian suffering entirely onto Hamas.
Entirely. And this is where he made that very direct historical link. He explicitly connected those spreading these charges today, genocide, starvation, to historical anti-Semites.
The medieval blood libels.
Exactly. Poisoning wells using Christian children's blood for matzah. He said anti-Semitism just keeps morphing, keeps coming back in new forms, but it's the same ancient hatred.
And he brought it right up to the present day, linking the rhetoric to actual violence against Jews worldwide.
He did. He listed recent assaults in Canada, Australia, Britain, France, the Netherlands, and then specific horrific incidents in the U.S. A Holocaust survivor burned to death in Colorado, an Israeli embassy couple shot dead outside the Holocaust Museum, tying the words directly to deadly conflict.
A very sobering connection. That this whole theme of global pressure, condemnation, and what he sees as hypocrisy leads us perfectly into Section 5.
The absolute rejection of imposed Palestinian statehood. This was arguably one of the most defiant parts of the address.
He started by directly criticizing specific Western leaders, France, Britain, Australia, Canada, others.
Right. For their decision to move towards unconditionally recognizing a Palestinian state after October 7th, he framed the timing as rewarding terrorism.
Based on what evidence of Palestinian popular opinion?
He cited a figure claiming nearly 90% of Palestinians in both Gaza and the West Bank, Judea-Samaria in his terminology, supported or celebrated the October 7th attacks.
He mentioned them dancing on rooftops, throwing candies.
Yes, drawing a parallel to some celebrations seen after 9/11. His argument was, recognizing a state for people who overwhelmingly support such atrocities sends the message that murdering Jews pays off. He called it appeasement that endangers everyone.
And this fed into his core argument about why there's no...
Exactly. He argued the root cause isn't the absence of a Palestinian state, but persistent Palestinian rejectionism. The fundamental problem, he claimed, is that Palestinians don't want a state next to Israel. They want one instead of Israel.
Yeah, that's the core sticking point he presented.
Absolutely. And he cited history as proof. Every time Palestinians were offered a state that required ending the conflict and recognizing Israel as a Jewish state, they rejected it, turned it down flat.
And furthermore, when they did get territory,
like Gaza in 2005 after Israel unilaterally withdrew, he argued they immediately turned it into a base for terror, launching unprovoked attack, proving, in his view, their true intention.
And he made it clear this rejectionism wasn't just Hamas. He included the Palestinian Authority, the PA, often seen as the more moderate faction.
He was very critical of the PA. He brought up the pay-for-slay policy.
Can you quickly explain pay-for-slay as defined it? For you, the learner, this is a key point of contention.
The speech defined it as the PA's official budgeted policy of paying monthly salaries to terrorists imprisoned in Israel and to the families of terrorists killed while carrying out attack. The payment amount increases based on the severity of the crime. The more Jews killed, the higher the payment.
So a direct financial incentive for terrorism, according to this view.
That's the accusation. He said the PA glorifies these killers as martyrs, naming schools, streets, town squares after. He brought up the specific case of Taylor Fort, the American West Point grad murdered by a Palestinian terrorist in Jaffa, whose killer's family receives PA, bringing it home for the American audience.
Beyond pay-for-slay, what other criticisms of the PA did he raise?
He called the PA corrupt to the core, pointed out they haven't held elections in about 20 years, and critically he claimed they used the exact same school textbooks as Hamas, indoctrinating children with hatred towards Jews, and the goal of destroying Israel, perpetuating the cycle.
And the treatment of minorities. He used Bethlehem as an example.
Right. He claimed that when Bethlehem was under Israeli administration, Christians made up about 80% of the population. Since the PA took over, he asserted, that figure has dropped to below 20%. The implication being that PA doesn't foster a tolerant, pluralistic society.
All this built up to that really stark analogy.
The sheer madness analogy. Comparing giving Palestinians a state near Jerusalem after October 7th to
giving al-Qaeda a state 1 mile from New York City after September 11th. It's designed to be shocking, to equate Palestinian statehood now with rewarding mass terror.
Absolutely. And to drive home that this wasn't just his government's position, but a national consensus, he highlighted that recent Knesset vote.
The vote opposing any imposed Palestinian state.
Exactly. 99 out of 120 Knesset members voted for it. That's over 80%, actually closer to 90% if you account for abstentions across Israel's incredibly diverse political spectrum, an overwhelming majority.
So the message to the world leaders pushing for recognition was
unequivocal. This is the will of the people of Israel, not just one leader or party. And the final line on this was incredibly blunt. Israel will not allow you to shove a terrorist state down our throat.
Wow. Okay, so after all that conflict, rejection, criticism, the speech pivots again in towards potential opportunity.
Surprisingly, yes. The argument shifted to say that the claimed victories over the Iran axis have actually opened up new, previously unthinkable avenues for peace in the region.
Like with Syria, that seemed unexpected.
Very unexpected. He stated that serious negotiations have actually begun with what he termed the new Syrian government. Now, what new Syrian government means is open to interpretation, but it strongly implies a significant shift away from Iranian influence, potentially enabled by the military actions described earlier.
And he laid out conditions for a potential peace deal with Syria?
Yes, it must respect Syria's sovereignty, but crucially, it must also protect Israeli security interests and the security of regional minorities. And he specifically singled out the Druze community in Syria.
And he included a personal story about the Druze.
He did. A very personal anecdote about how his life was saved years ago by advice from a Druze IDF soldier, Salem Shui, a friend, and how that experience informed his later decision as prime minister to intervene to stop jihadists from massacring Druze villagers near the border. He framed it as both strategic and a moral debt repaid.
Interesting link between personal history and policy. What about Lebanon?
He called for direct negotiations with the Lebanese government. He commended their stated goal of disarming Hezbollah, but emphasized that words aren't enough. Sustained action to disarm Hezbollah is required for real peace.
And until then?
Until Hezbollah is actually disarmed, Israel reserves the right to take necessary action to defend itself and maintain the ceasefire conditions on the northern.
But the biggest diplomatic prize mentioned was the expansion of the Abraham.
That was presented as the ultimate positive outcome. The argument was a decisive victory over Hamas will remove a major obstacle to peace and unlock normalization agreements across the Arab and Muslim world, dramatically expanding on the accords brokered by President Trump 5 years ago.
He saw signs of this already.
He pointed to encouraging words spoken at the UN by the president of Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim-majority nation, as a hopeful sign of what's possible.
And the benefits of this expansion.
He focused on cooperation, highlighting Israel's groundbreaking technologies in medicine, science, agriculture, water management, defense, AI benefits that could flow to the entire region through peaceful partnerships.
So, linking military success directly to future prosperity and stability?
Exactly. And the speech ended on this quite optimistic, almost visionary note. A future Middle East transformed, with brave peacemakers replacing warmongers. He even expressed hope for the Iranian people to regain their freedom, envisioning a restored friendship between the two ancient peoples of Israel and Iran.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the final takeaway message, the narrative, was really one of resolve rooted in history, wasn't it?
Deeply rooted. He framed October 7th as echoing centuries of Jewish vulnerability, a time when Jewish blood was cheap, when they had to rely on others, often futilely, for protection.
But the rise of Israel changed that.
That was the core message. Israel gave the Jewish people the ability to defend themselves. And that's what the soldiers are doing now, he said, fighting not just for survival, but for the dream of generation. Freedom, independence, security, and being a force for good, a light unto the nation through progress and innovation.
So the speech ties the immediate military task, finishing Hamas, directly to that larger diplomatic vision of expansion.
Absolutely. The argument is that strength, resolve, and achieving military victory are the necessary prerequisites for achieving that brilliant future of prosperity and peace. In this view, peace comes through defeating terror, not by compromising.
Which leaves us with a really interesting final thought to the learner to consider long after the...
Right. This whole address seems to propose a very specific theory of peacemaking, doesn't it? That lasting regional peace, like expanding the Abraham Accord, fundamentally depends on first militarily defeating and dismantling entities like Hamas and weakening their sponsors like Iran, and simultaneously rejecting outright the traditional model of Palestinian statehood based on what he calls rejection.
So the question is, does this speech imply that the speaker believes genuine peace is only possible through this path of military dominance and bypassing traditional diplomacy with Palestinians? Or is this simply presented as the only realistic path remaining, given the current dynamics, to achieve stability?
It's a crucial distinction. Is it a preferred strategy or seen as the only viable one left? Something to definitely mull over as you watch events unfold in the Middle East.
A lot to think about there. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.